So I think naturally as a business student, what I learned in NTU is a good sense of business fundamentals in terms of both business and definitely on the accounting end to be able to read the financial statements, etc. I think all this gives me a good set of basic skills to start with, but I would definitely not say that this will be necessary for any student to enter consulting, because as we can see, there are a lot of people from the liberal arts, from even the engineering backgrounds who are entering into this particular profession. So I guess at the end of the day, it's less of what you study in university, but more of what you bother to learn outside of your curriculum in university that shows your interest, okay, your possible interest in consulting. So if you find yourself having quite a bit of, I don't know, curiosity for things happening around you, questioning why certain things happen, for what reasons, etc., I think this may be something that you want to potentially explore.
So I would answer this with an engineering perspective. I'm sure my peers who studied business would have a different answer, but as an engineer, what we are taught is to have an analytical mindset. Especially as a computer science student, you're taught to build problems that flow logically, and that kind of mindset really helped me look at business problems from a very logical perspective as well. I was able to break down big problems into smaller chunks, which again is a kind of mindset that was developed here in NTU. So I think from an engineering perspective, what's really important is the kind of mindset that is developed. I also took courses in entrepreneurship and business, and that's where I really refined the way I present, the way I communicate. So I was able to really get a good balance between the analytics or the pure intellectual rigor with communication skills, just because I was able to take so many courses. So that flexibility that NTU allows is really helpful.
I think the curriculum at business school was very helpful because we learned how to do formal presentations, and besides that they also train us a lot analytically, so we are comfortable with using Excel. We also learn a bit of data analytics, so all that is pretty helpful when it comes to the technical aspect of the job. But what the school has also taught us is also a lot of people skills, how we manage working together as a project team, and that is very relevant to consulting because in consulting we work in small teams and there's a lot of people issues, teamwork, and I think my college journey has prepared me for that very sufficiently.
I would say as an engineering student, the engineering curriculum prepared me in terms of the analytical thinking and the way that engineering solves questions from step 1 to step 2 and leading to a definite goal, sometimes with a little bit of ambiguity, which is also part of the nature of the work of consulting. Apart from that, I'd say the engineering school with the video recording gave us lots of autonomy in how we can spend our own time, and that allowed me to participate in relevant CCAs such as SHARE and Management Consulting Clubs, where I could spend much more time preparing for the interview, looking for jobs, and doing real-life projects, which make sure that I could even secure an interview. So all these parts count.
So I think outside of the formal education under NTU, what really allowed me to explore my interest in consulting was a series of student clubs and activities, as well as internships that I joined during the course of this 4 years. So in terms of student clubs and activities, I think mainly I'll classify them under business solutions, as well as another sort of consulting club known as Conjunct.
So other than my academics and the case practice that I would do pretty regularly, I was also part of a case club, or a consulting club rather. So the Management Consulting Club, I started that club because I felt, number one, that there was no community of students who could practice cases, and number two, I thought that it would add value to my resume, right? And I think the most important thing was that building this community really not only helped me, but also helped a lot of other students get internships, get jobs in consulting firms. And I think giving back to the community was quite important to me.
Outside the formal education that under NTU, I think what really helped me in understanding or exploring my interest in management consulting was a series of activities that I joined, as well as internships that I also participated in throughout the 4 years of university. So in terms of student activities, under the first club that I've joined, which is Business Solutions, I received like around a 6 to 7 week training as to what really constitute problem-solving skills. And I think these are basic fundamental set of skills that are being practiced by management consultants currently, as well as we learn how to apply it in solving business problems. So under Business Solutions, what we did was for every week we were required to work on a real business problem and present our presentation to our seniors on every Saturday. Yeah.
I think my CCA really helped me in preparing to become a consultant, because a lot of the alumni from my CCA are from consulting companies. So speaking to them really helped. Participating in case competitions through my CCA also helped. Besides that, just speaking to people in the industry also kind of helps you in understanding why you want to do this. So I would say my CCA and just speaking to people who are already in the industry. So those are my personal learning sources.
And moving on, actually I find myself rather slanted towards creating social impact as well, and that's why I joined Conjunct Consulting and during the course of it I worked on one particular project that really allowed me to understand how client management work, how a consulting project may also turn out. And I think during then it gave me realistic expectations of how you may start a project thinking that, oh, it's really exciting, I want to make impact for the client, etc. But during the course of it, you may get a bit lethargic because you know that the client may not be able to implement the solutions, or the solutions that you have proposed, may not be as good as you imagined, etc. So a lot of difficulties come along the way, and you understand how difficult it may be to really come up with a solution that's logical and yet implementable by the client. So I think this Business Solutions and Conjunct altogether gave me a realistic sense of firstly what's required, and secondly how it really turns out in the real world. I think other than that, throughout the few years, I also joined a series of case competitions on the national level, and the kind of exposure it gave me was that I made it a point to join with different friends of mine for each competition, and that gave me a sense of what it takes to form a team that is balanced, and what it takes to form a team that's motivated enough and has people of complementary strengths such that we can perform on the competition. Lastly, in terms of the internships, I also made it a point to try to get as much working experience with the different consulting firms, and that's when I realized that your consulting experience can be greatly affected by the kind of firm that you join, by the kind of projects they take on. And it is also when you get to know different consultants as well as their varying backgrounds and evaluate whether you are fit for the job.
Good question. So the earlier the better. I started preparing when I was at the end of my second year, and I was just in time to get the interviews because consulting firms typically interview for an internship in the preceding years, the first semester of the preceding year. So let's say you were going to intern in Bain, for example. They only take penultimate students. So they will interview you in third year, assuming it's a 4-year degree, in the first semester of your third year. So you need to know that you're pursuing consulting before that so that you have enough time to practice. So I would say try to find out what you're passionate about, if it's consulting, if it's finance, if it's programming, by the end of your first year.
I guess there's no standard answer to it. I think the key thing is, regardless of whichever profession that you may be interested in, just act on your interests and not just think about it. Because there are a lot of, I think a lot of times we are tempted to just think about the idea, but you can't really evaluate your suitability for something if you just keep thinking about it. So I guess the best way to start is, for example, if you are interested in consulting, then try to do something that is similar to consulting in some aspects. And that will give you an idea of, firstly, whether you possess the strengths required for it, and secondly, whether even if you like the work itself.
Right? You have enough resources, you have enough seniors to talk to, you have the career counselors. There are enough resources for you to find out, what would you be more open towards and what would you prefer not to do, right? And then once you start doing internships in those industries, you can really find out if, that industry is suited to you or not. So to summarize, I think the earlier the better. I would say by the end of the first year, you should know what path should you be on so that you can really prepare yourself, because you'll be competing with the best, right? You're competing with people from Ivy League universities in the United States. You're competing with people, the top people from NUS Business, NTU Business. You need to have that much practice that you're able to hold your own, you're able to excel even amongst the competition like that. So if I could do it all over again, I would start practicing perhaps from year 2, semester 1, if I'd known that earlier.
So for students who may be interested in trying out a career in consulting, I think my advice would be to first talk to people, find out information about it. And then after you find out certain information about it and you think that you may be further interested, that's when you should start acting on that interest, whether is it through joining some activities in school. I think one of the easiest way is to join a case competition with some of your friends and see whether you even enjoy the process of doing the all-nighters, doing the research, doing the modeling, etc., and even presenting in front of a crowd, whether you feel nervous about it. And once you are done with experimenting, with trying out certain things that may be similar to consulting, that's when you start really going for an internship. Because I think an internship is more of a commitment because of the fact that you are spending 3 to 6 months on a particular internship. So once you have established a strong enough interest, that's when I think you should start going for internships. And people may have this perception that consulting internships might be hard to get, especially if you are just year 1 or year 2. But I think you just have to go for the low-hanging fruits, go for consulting firms that are relatively less well-known, but will still offer you that mentorship experience and that realistic experience of working on projects. And yep, I think the key thing is to keep trying out and keep talking to people.
I think career is a very personal thing. There is no right endpoint. That's my personal perspective. Like even consulting, to me, it might not be an endpoint per se as well. It might just be something where I really get to explore different industries and solve tough business problems, and that is in line with what I'm interested in at this point of time. But those interests can change, and I think as a student, I was interested in a lot of things as well, which made me test out a lot of different internships in different industries. So if there would be a tip for future students, it would be to do different internships, because only then will you really see whether a particular career is in line with your personal values, your personal lifestyle, and that essentially is a very personal question.
Enjoy the interview. A lot of people think that it's they're out to get you, or like they want to trip you up at some point of time. They really want to catch a mistake. That's not really true. They really want to understand you more as a person. They want to understand your motivations, and they really want to see if you can be a good consultant. So I guess instead of being antagonistic, you need to think of them as a partner who is really trying to bring out the best side of you for the interview. So I guess it's important for you to understand that, for you to imbibe that, so that your subconscious doesn't affect you and you're able to perform the best that you can.
So as an engineering student, I'm actually very happy to go into consulting and not worried about not fitting into the culture at all. So statistics show that, as you could guess, business student is taking up most of the place in consulting, probably 40%. And at the second place is actually engineering students, which take up about 30%. And that leaves 30% for all the other students.
And I think lastly, CAO is an underrated resource. So I was motivated a lot by Esther. I used to meet her very frequently. A lot of resources were provided to me by Esther, and that's really how I began this journey. So I think for anyone looking to start their journey towards consulting, or even if they are reaching the end point, right? They're doing interviews, there would be some downtimes, right? Perhaps you've not got an offer you really think you should have gotten. And you know, just talking to Esther, she can really help you de-stress, she really helps you clear your mind. I think it's a very good resource that a lot of students are not able to appreciate fully.
I think if you're interested in consulting, you can try out participating in case competitions. That is the best proxy to working as a consultant. Alternatively, you can join consulting like CCAs. So CCAs like NTU Share, Conjunct, those are great CCAs where you can actually work as a project team to solve a business problem. But besides all that, the surefire way to see whether you are really a good fit for a consulting firm would be to do an internship with a consulting firm. So yeah, those would be 3 possible platforms to really see whether it's a good fit for you. And for those interested, you should definitely try out doing those 3 things.
Okay, so while a career in consulting is great, right? You get to travel, you get to solve problems that are impactful most of the time, you're remunerated pretty decently. It's not for everyone. The hours could be quite long, and sometimes the work could get a bit monotonous. The work would be stressful most of the time, and you'll need to travel away from family perhaps. For a lot of people, that perhaps is not the kind of career they envision themselves having. So understanding that while consulting has its pros, it also has its cons, is very important for you to be able to make an informed decision about your career. And once you're able to make this informed decision, you know why a career in consulting is meant for you. You're able to answer the question in interviews. In every interview, they're going to ask you the question, why consulting? You're able to answer that with honesty. You know, after understanding yourself, you're able to convince the interviewer why a career in consulting is the right thing for you. And I think that really helps during the interview process.